Hi, this is Professor Ed Blakely talking about another important topic, the future of our cities. And that topic is water. How we get it, how we use it. Around me are maps of the driest continent in the world. This continent was founded on its coast, and we haven't moved very far away from those coasts. The reason for that is a lack of water. We need to get water, to organize it, to preserve it in every way possible. To my right is a development that uses water in new ways. Above me is a full expression of this development, how it works. It provides water from the sky in the form of rain, water from flushing toilets, from watering lawns. The water is recycled. This recycling is a process that we're all going to have to know more about because this is the way of the future. This development is development we're going to talk about with two individuals who know an awful lot about how to use water and how to use it well. Let's go to them now to talk about water. Let's go inside this great development. There's green on the outside and green on the inside. It's a marvelous space, a self-contained space. People live here, work here, and shop here in this beautiful development. As you can see, everything is organized around greenery, getting people close to nature, as well as providing a very clean, clear environment. The people who've done this had several things in mind. One was to make a good inside space, and the other was to make a great outside space, which we're going to now. And as you can see, outside is a beautiful park. This park is part of the development, an integral part of the development. It makes everything work because when you have the small apartments that are here, you have to have a backyard, and this is the backyard. Also, this backyard contains eating establishments, dining places, another front room for you with your visitors. It is a complete and interesting development. It's still being done. We've just talked about water, but electricity can be produced in the same way in a precinct so that water and electricity can be produced in this environment, and you would not need to hook up to outside electricity or outside water. This is the wave of the future. Right now, it's being done in very large developments, but in the not too distant future, it's going to be done in smaller areas. I'm going to talk to Dennis Fontinis, who is from Toronto, where they've carried this much further, with the entire downtown recycling its water. And Terry Leakey, the person who's done this development and will be doing the entire area, including the university just across the street that you can see in this picture. So the future is here, and these are two gentlemen who are leading that future. We're going to talk to them for a few minutes about what is and what will be. Please stick with us. Terry Lackey and Dennis Fontinis, and we've been talking about the future. But it's really the past redone. That is, water, cooling, all together, generated in one place in a district or precinct and not some big mega system. This is a fairly simple idea, why is it so hard to get it going? And first, Terry, why do you think it's hard to get it going? And then, Dennis, you've had a lot of experience in actually making it go. What makes it go? Why is it so hard for us to get this going?
I think sometimes it's just about getting those reference sites on the ground. It's getting those examples. People like to touch and feel and see that they're not the first to do some things. They like to look over the fence and observe it for a while, and then, yeah, it seems to work. It seems to be, doing what they said it was going to do. And here we're just starting to see some of those examples.
Well, what are some of those examples?
So the one today was about Central Park, and Central Park is has a water and energy system within the basement of that precinct, and it distributes both hot and chilled thermal water, and distributes recycled water, takes all the waste from that community and spreads it around. So it's a good example, and people can now look at it and can see it operational.
But that's one building. It's not quite a precinct.
Yeah, but it's one building that it's in, but it's serving a number of buildings, and will also, and then it will be able to be connected to across the road to the university. Yeah.
So, Dennis, you've actually done something a little bit bigger in Toronto. What are the components of it?
Well, the bringing water in from the lake to cool buildings in downtown Toronto was a pretty creative way to solve a bunch of problems. The problem that the city had with potable water and resolved their issues with cleaner water. The problem that some of the buildings had in getting air conditioning and resolving the shortage of power in that area. So we were able to displace our connection to the grid. So it was a little easier for us because in the initial stages the city forced buildings to connect. We went back later and renegotiated those contracts, and we became good guys, and we perceived as good guys. But the fact of the matter was that the two first large-scale customers were forced to connect, and so that was a benefit to us. And then, like Terry said, once you get the two, then the third one's a little bit easier, and then the fourth one becomes easier. And then,
then you're on a roll.
Then you're on a roll.
But no. So we've got water, heat, energy, wastewater, moving around so they produce enough energy for electricity or other kinds of things. Now you have an energy company, a power company that does the same thing. You have a water company that does the same thing. Now, if I'm just the average Joe, I say, why in the heck do I need you guys? Because you're not producing something different than they're producing.
Right.
Is it cheaper? Is it better?
Well, that's just it. You've got to compete on all those fronts, right? Because you as the district energy or district integrated district utility provider of services, you've got to be better, cheaper, more flexible, and you've got to be environmentally friendly, and we have got to achieve a standard that the utilities don't. And nobody holds them to account.
But there's another thing that seems to me you're doing, is when my electricity goes off, I don't know where the hell it is.
Right.
It could be 3 states away.
Right.
When the water stops, I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah.
But in a smaller environment, and in particularly North America, where almost every winter this stuff goes down, if you could control that, wouldn't you be a little bit better off?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's also about technology. So I think we created those citywide systems with the technology that we had at the time, and it was about improving health. It was about providing, a standard of living. It was about providing essential service. And what we have overlaid that is we've got a whole lot of new technologies that enable us to make things smaller and to improve the efficiency at the local scale that we didn't have before.
Great.
And we can't. We struggle. Those legacy companies that have legacy systems look at how can they expand their legacy system, and that doesn't allow them to embrace the new technologies. And we are able to start afresh. We're able to take it on a local scale and say, well, how do we capture resources locally and how do we then reuse them locally? So we're not transporting them long distances, and we have the inefficiencies of transmission lines, and we have the breakdowns and the cost. So we start to bolt on things to those old systems to make them reliable, to make them more efficient, but it's clunky. We start again and we go, well, at a precinct level, urban renewal, we create renewed technology and renewed systems.
All right, precinct. What is a precinct? Is this something smaller than a city, bigger than? What is a precinct? Is it 1 mile square or smaller? Or does it depend on what you're doing? What is a precinct?
I don't know if there's a defined radius or square footage or area for a precinct. Maybe there is. I don't know. But not that I know. But I think it's an area that is being developed that reques a variety of services to come into play. That is underserved.
But there's got to be a scale.
There's got to be a scale. So absolutely, there's got to be a scale. So it's not one or two buildings. It's probably a number of buildings, but more importantly, probably a number of generally diversified uses as well.
So it's not just a water use.
Right.
Or just a sewage use. It's multiple uses and the interaction of those uses and the interplay of those uses.
They're absent. So you don't. I think a precinct, in my sense, is that an area that doesn't have, water determined yet, how you're going to supply the water or treat the wastewater or supply the heating or the cooling or the electricity, and it's a raw area. Not, I don't know how else to define it.
There's proximity. In fact, there's a precinct right behind us.
Yeah,
right? That's a precinct.
Yeah, sure.
From end to end, building to building.
Yeah.
You can make one pipe or a series of pipes to connect those things up. But when you get beyond that, I notice even in the picture, the buildings start getting smaller. The need to make those connections diminish. So there's a scale. There has to be a set of buildings that have occupants in them that in the 24-hour cycle is used some of the time somewhere.
And I think we're trying not to be too prescriptive with the precinct because it's the economic drivers, it's the growth. So is it an existing area of community, or is it a new area of community? We look at what's the growth rate, and so what's your investment cycle going to look like? And therefore you go, well, we're going to grow this massive community in 5 years. Well, okay, that can be a precinct because the technology we apply to that is not going to be outstripped by new technology in its time. And you go, okay, we'll invest in that, and the rate of uptake of the services is such that you go, we'll invest more upfront because we know that we're going to get that return. Whereas if it's a slow uptake, then you tend to take it a bit smaller. You make them smaller. You don't invest too much upfront, and you allow yourself to be able to embrace new technology, which might be applied to this little neighbourhood next door, which is like a second precinct, and so you create this flexible model that then is around economics, is around demand, is around growth, and then
these are like little bubbles,
little hubs.
That's a good analogy.
But now we could get back to the same old danger. The people who have the legacy organizations, they were fresh at one time.
They were
exciting, new, interesting, offering great services. Their prices were going down at one time. What's to prevent you from acting like the legacy groups?
Yeah, well, I think
once you have something, you got it in.
Yeah, I think we're in the era of rapid change, though. So whereas when we started these,
so you're future-proofing from the beginning.
Absolutely, we're making.
You have to.
Yeah, have to. So you can assume that the technology that you apply today is not going to be the technology you apply, in 10 years' time to the same space. So the spaces have to be able to be repurposed. You make them flat floors because you don't know what the technology is you're going to put in there. You create these flexible systems so you can plug anything in that you want, and you can do that. So you have that in mind. You get that sort of design thought around, we don't know what the future holds for this system, so let's make it as flexible as possible, and let's have a whole series of levers so that we can adjust with the demands
This
and
is
the time.
an interesting discussion. Think about now. You guys are a little younger than me, but when I went to school, bigger was better.
Yes.
And everything was going to be uniform.
Right.
Ford made the best automobile because every one of them came off the assembly line the same. We even built our schools like that. Notice how the schools are organized? The bell rings and people move from place to place. You're talking about something that in my day we would call dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But
Radical shifts.
Yeah.
But how do we even educate people to come into your industry to replace you, who can think about the future? This is an interesting.
I think that Terry's right. The change now with young people today. You know, we talked about Uber before.
Yeah.
Every day is a paradigm shift. It just seems that, and you know, we when we talk about a paradigm shift, we're talking about changing something that's been in place for over 100 years, and we call it a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift today is something that's been in place for a month. That's a paradigm shift. Next month,
I'm talking to my watch.
That's right. So, you know, and I agree with Terry. The technology is going to be different. And I have no clue. You know, well, if somebody, you know, in 1980, if somebody said to me, "Oh, we're going to be cooling buildings in downtown Toronto using lake water," I would have said, "Well, you're smoking something. What are you talking about? That's crazy. That's nonsense." And here we are.
We might well be smoking.
Yeah, well, we may have been. But no, I think the thing about precinct and what we're talking about networks is tying people to a common purpose. And so, you know, today the pipe network connects them to one source of generation or whatever that is. Tomorrow they may not need a pipe network; they may be able to do it individually. But having created this precinct approach, and you have created this
more flexibility.
This approach today, which, you know, for the foreseeable future anyway, is going to tie them to some kind of common destiny, means that, you know, today they're all getting their heating, cooling, and wastewater treatment and recycled water from one source. Tomorrow, I don't know, maybe a little unit that you put in each whatever unit, and it does the whole thing. But what you've done, though, is you now created a community and a common purpose amongst 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 buildings, 100 buildings, I don't know, whatever you define as a precinct, so that when that new technology comes into play, you're able to say, I can commercialize it because I now have 100 buildings or 50 buildings or 50 suites or whatever number of suites that all have a common vision for their future.
So this
That's
is
what the network does.
This is a different thing, though. In a sense, by this network idea, you allow for new things to enter the network.
Yeah, exactly.
So the person in the network can be an inventor.
Exactly.
They don't have to be independent.
Exactly.
They can alter the system. You might have people in that network actually come up with new apps.
Absolutely.
To use the network in ways you never thought of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And within the environment, so it might not even just be reliant upon the network, but it's the way that the services are set up within that community and interlinked. And it might be a service that doesn't rely on the network. So we might, and you think about destructive, industries that we're seeing now, we're seeing more of them that change an industry rapidly. What we didn't have in the past. You could see it sneaking up on you, and I don't think it'll happen. And years later, that car manufacturing plant has closed down.
Right.
Why did that happen? How isn't that bad? Now you're seeing it almost overnight. This technology's come in, it's been released, and next thing you know, it's
so kind of the last thing for me with you guys is this is going somewhere. There's some things that are coming in now. For example, the driverless cars really here. I was in one of them when I was at the University of California. Yeah, wow. Went across the Bay Bridge in one of them. Nothing. It didn't hit anything. Got across.
My wife's going to be able to park the car down.
Your wife will be able to park the car
without hitting the guy behind her.
I don't see any future for a big hospital. I don't know why we're building these damn things.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
This was totally weird. I think hospitals are going to be very small now.
Absolutely.
There'd be in existing office buildings and things like this. Hotels are going to change and the like. But you are aiding and abetting this. So since you're kind of on the forefront, what are some of the 2 or 3 things that you think are going to happen that this is an enabler for? What are some of the things that you see the future unfolding as?
Yeah, so I think when we look at communities, so land, housing, supply, and we look at what are those? What do the services look like to them? We don't have necessarily the same connected grids in the street.
No.
We have a lot of it managed locally. If you think about Tesla's technology with the power wall, it's sexy. You can now be able to link it to a solar, and now you're able to provide your own energy.
Yeah.
It's linked with your car, and your car now doesn't use petrol. It can run on the energy that you produce at your home. It doesn't cost
Or it might even run on the energy that's produced in the road system itself.
Correct, and that's free. So it transforms. So how do you create a utility of old that gives away energy for free? How do they get their head around that? They've got all this network, this legacy system.
So you see an energy-free future?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are more motivated when they're angry and upset about something.
Yeah.
When they want to, you want to get somebody to do something. I'm gonna piss them off. Excuse my language.
We probably do that a lot in politics.
So when you do that, people do that. And so I think what's happening is as grids are getting older and the lack of
they're failing more.
and there's an infrastructure deficit and there are more brownouts and there are more power outages and power is going up and people are going to start getting upset and saying, you know what, Terry's right. They're going to be entities.
I want to be in control of my own destiny.
There'll be entities like Enwave and Flow and others saying, hey, you can do this on a community basis, and you know what, you can. Whether it's
on an individual basis.
You can do geothermal, you can do wastewater, you can do solar, you can do this, you can do that. All these different technologies, and you can connect them, and you've got a combined interest with your neighbor, and you can do this and you don't need to rely on the local utility anymore. You don't need to take that abuse anymore, and people will react when they're abused. If it's a good to have, I'm not really concerned if it's good to have. But if I'm really upset, boy, I'm going to do something about it, and I think. That's what's happening with the utilities, and it's happening, and they don't even realize it right underneath their noses. Find me one person who hasn't had a terrible experience with the electric utility in their community, in their city. Everyone.
Or things they're paying too much.
Yeah, or things are paying too much, or somebody says, I like my electric utility.
From what you said, this kind of precinct notion, if you could miniaturize enough, and I think we can get there, all of a sudden people in Africa don't need to move.
Right.
All of a sudden they can generate water where they never generated it before.
Right.
If you can go down 1,300 meters to get water in Florida, you can do the same thing in the Sahara.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you use the sun to generate enough energy for your automobile, it can generate enough energy for your house.
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
You could produce enough food in the Sudan places to feed all of Africa simply by having a little bit of water on a regular basis. Because that's all California is.
Yeah.
Big desert with a little water.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So these technologies, from my point of view, are really transformed because they allow a poor person to compete. Their big disability in our industrial age has been the system has been so big they couldn't acquire it. But we saw what happened in Vietnam. Once those people got the cell phone, they didn't put up any wires and poles.
No.
Right?
Right.
And why did how did they get the cell phone? Was because it became in the third world, it became mass.
Easy, quickly.
And it became mass production. The price point went down.
To the
point where you give them away. You give away the phone, and and so everyone can get them for free. We recycle our existing phones that we didn't want. We can give them to somebody else. So.
But you're right. Then you don't need to string
all this wire stuff
and poles across
and build these giant roads and all this kind of stuff.
I mean, I look at it now, and with young kids today that move out, and very few of them when they move out. Pay for local telephone service. Everybody has a cell phone.
My kids don't have.
They have cell phones. You know,
They use Wi-Fi.
nobody. I can't remember the last time I took a call other than from a telemarketer on my house line.
Yeah,
The only people that called my house line are telemarketers. You know, even my
to the point where you don't answer it
my
anymore.
85-year-old mother calls me on her cell, and she texts now too. So you know, she's an immigrant from Greece and barely can speak 2 words, but she can text and call. But the point I'm trying to say is that, you know, you're right. That's a paradigm shift, and so that's what's going to happen. Someone's going to turn around and say, "Why are we connected to the electric grid? Really? That's how we should do it. Why are we not, you know, and why
Yeah.
you know, why are we dependent on you know, the water, and why
Yeah,
are
that's
we
right.
using potable water to flush our toilets, and why aren't we, you know, and people, when they keep on asking the why, are going to come up with the answer soon, and they're not going to like the answer. They're gonna decide.
The end of this for me is we're in Australia and you're from Canada. 2 giant land masses, not many people. What we can offer the world is how to be smart.
Right.
We can't compete with more coal or more this,
no.
but we can compete with more of this so that people can live where they are. They don't have to immigrate to
Yeah.
another place because they've got a decent house where they are.
Yes.
They can watch television forever. So when the big dictator says, "I'm going to save you," they say, "Hey, buddy, I know better."
Right.
So the future, for me, is about empowering people to make their own decisions in their own place.
Yep. Agree.
So thank you, guys.
Right.
Remember, this is your world. You can make a big change too. It's not just the technicians and the technocrats, like the people we just talked to. You have every opportunity to change the world. Let's do it now. Every one of us has a way to shape the future. We brought you one way, and you can advocate for the use of water, the creation of district energy in your community. Let's make a better world by doing what we can with the resources we have. You are the future. See you again, and thank you.